2026 defensive end edge rusher Dre Quinn, who was being recruited by Texas as well as a grip of other schools, has now committed to Clemson. Cody, your immediate thoughts?
My immediate thoughts are sucks because it feels like Texas has lost out on a couple of different opportunities this week. Sam Roseborough, KJ Edwards, and now Dre Quinn. Dre Quinn from Norcross, Georgia, transferred to Buford, Georgia. He's now going to be playing with Bryce Perry, right? Another player, defensive end in the 2026 class that it's both these guys are being recruited by Texas, and both these guys are also being recruited by Clemson. And he just got done talking about how important the family feel was at Clemson, and how the first time he went to Clemson, that was the vibe. And I kind of just immediately thought, my immediate thought was, when he went to Austin the first time and he visited Texas, it was like, he's like, I really love Texas. I really love Austin. And when he talks about Clemson, he's talking about the family thing. And it's always a different vibe from every different player, but edge and defensive end is somewhere that Texas has been making a big focus this weekend. Richard Wesley's going to be in town. Luke Wafel was supposed to be in town this weekend. He committed this morning to USC. They got in a NIL battle with USC and Ohio State. So Texas is pushing buttons. Xavier Griffin was in last weekend, and they got another big weekend ahead.
Of course, we're brought to you by the Man Eye Institute. See life better. Again, the Man Eye Institute. See life better. Make sure and give them a phone call, 844-WOW-2020, 844-WOW-2020. Thanks so much to the Man Eye Institute for making these videos available. Cody, what does this say for the rest of the recruiting class? Because to me, I wonder, they do have in this week, so they'll have Trenton Henderson from Pensacola, Florida, who will be in this week. You already mentioned that who was it who just committed this morning? It was Wafel. So he's off the board. To me, this is shaping up to where it's like, all right, are we just going to be looking as far as the edge? Is it coming down to I wrote about this earlier today. I mean, Colin Simmons, unfortunately for Texas fans, he's only going to be here for 3 years. You need to start kind of looking to the future. And when you look at a guy like Richard Wesley, who is going to be in town this week, he's not. I wrote about him today, and I'm like, well, this guy's not a Colin Simmons. He's not like this kind of compact, violent pipe bomb off the edge. He's more of a guy that wins with his play strength, his physicality. He's got a lot of good length to him. Bigger guy, bigger proportions, but not the same kind of get off. But certainly the kind of traits that, like the 5-star traits, where if you're looking for your next big edge rush weapon, Wesley would certainly qualify. I think that Jamarian Carlton, it feels like things are starting to heat back up with him out of Temple, and then also in this weekend is Xavier Griffin, a different kind of edge player, but maybe a little bit more sort of in the mold of I'm sorry. Xavier Griffin was in last weekend. Okay, sorry. He a little bit different of a mold than what we talked about in Richard Wesley, lighter. Maybe profiles almost a little bit more like a Dre Quinn sort of would have profiled. Where does Texas go from here, given what they currently have on the roster?
Well, I think you brought up the first thing. I know positionally where we're talking about, strong side ends and edge rushers, and that Colin Simmons kind of role was definitely where I think you envision the Dre Quinns of the world, the Jamarian Carltons, and Trenton Henderson from Pensacola that'll be in this weekend. But, that Xavier Griffin thing, they get him labeled as a linebacker consensus right now, but kind of looked at as in that Trey Moore coming off the edge, rushing the passer type of situation. There's another guy coming in this weekend, Kelvin Thomas from Cypress Ranch, who I think fits in that Xavier Griffin role kind of as the pivot point, the pivot off of Xavier Griffin. If they don't get him, Kelvin Thomas is waiting in the wings. The other part of with Dre Quinn, I think that's where maybe there was a vibe coming out last weekend, because we did hear pretty much all week until last night into this morning that Dre Quinn was potentially going to be a Texas guy. Everybody pretty much had them future casted, crystal balled everything to Texas until late last night into this morning. And Trenton Henderson, of course, had an unofficial visit to Texas about a week and a half ago, midweek. Then he sets up the official this week. Henderson, Carlton. It feels like to me, and you referenced the write-up over on Orange Bloods, we kind of did a draft back and forth about this weekend's visitors, and I kind of referenced it in there too. It's like this feels like a class where they need to get 2, probably 3 defensive end / edge rushers. And as the names are kind of just like, ticking off the board here with Wayful, and it feels like Wesley's probably more of an Oregon guy. He was committed to Oregon once already. Now you lose Dre Quinn. It feels like the names are slowly kind of ticking off the board, which it's a problem. But I do think that Jamarian Carlton gives you a sense of a little bit of, good feel. And you look at the recruiting board from Jason today, it had 70% on Jamarian Carlton as the update.
So that's obviously good. And I think you think 2 to 3 is right, because whenever I look at the current sort of state of things, I guess with Colton Vasek, we need to just keep an open mind as to what he could be. A guy who was turning the corner towards the end of last season, but of course we didn't get to see him in the spring because of the shoulder surgery. Ethan Burke will be gone after this next season. You have Trey Moore, who'll be gone after this next season. Colin Simmons has 2 more seasons left at Texas. Texas has Zena Yamuzolo, who I believe will be a redshirt freshman this year. But then other than that, you look at some of these guys, you have Lance Jackson and Justice Terry, both of whom are players who are kind of playing at the strong side defensive end right now, and maybe getting some work in sub packages as that 3 technique, dime package, dollar package, NASCAR package, these kinds of pass rush stuff. But I do think that Lance Jackson is a guy that could eventually move his way inside. Justice Terry was certainly projected as a player who moved his way inside. I think as he was if he can get up 20 pounds from where he was practicing at in the spring, I think he can play 3 technique as soon as week 1 of this next season if it's 20 good pounds. So you might lose him at one of the edges. You really do. You need to go do something here, because here's the one thing about the portal is I think it's about to be changing a little bit with the new revenue sharing stuff. The teams are going to have options to have buyouts, and players have to pay their NIL money back if they transfer and stuff. I'm not sure. I think the transfer portal could go back a little bit to where the players that are going to be entering aren't necessarily these kind of top tier marquee style players. And I'm not sure that that's where you want to. I don't think you want to go to the transfer portal for your left tackle or for your elite edge rusher. You need to recruit these guys. You need to get the Colin Simmonses of the world. You need to have them stay at your school for 3 years and go on to the NFL. And the numbers are a little bit concerning. Dre Quinn, obviously, good pickup for Clemson, and congratulations to Dabo Swinney for figuring out how to use NIL. I guess he's finally entered that world.
Everybody adjusts at some point, but I mean, it comes down to this: Xavier Griffin, Jamarian Carlton, Trenton Henderson, Bryce Perry-Wright, potentially even more leaning towards Clemson. But I think you wrote it up best in the column, man. It feels like it's getting to the point where it's going to be Richard Wesley no matter what.
Richard Wesley. Well, that's a Richard Wesley no matter what with a question mark, because I'm not exactly sure that he's at the Colin Simmons level. But I do think that for the Texas staff, what this means now is Jamarian Carlton no matter what.